Let's talk about the 300th YCS. We have a lot of things to go over, and most importantly, I want to give you a little bit of a tournament report. Of course, as I've already posted on YouTube, I have made top 16 with Sky Striker at the YCS, and I have talked already plenty about my deck choice and also the deck profile in general over on my YouTube channel. So if you want more detail on the list in particular, and so on and so forth, you can check that out over there. Today I want to give you guys a little bit of a tournament report, like how my rounds went. We can talk about it in a little bit more detail, as well as talk about some of the questions that people had on under my YouTube deck profile, like something like people were talking about, like, whoa, the side deck patterns and so on and so forth. Like we can talk about it a little bit more. But yes, ultimately, as I already discussed in my video that I posted before the YCS even happened, I was torn between playing Draco Tail, Radiant Typhoon, and Sky Striker, which is something I've been talking about on stream pretty openly as well. I was considering those three decks the most. The deck I wanted to play the most was Sky Striker. I just love this deck's playstyle, man. It's really grindy, a lot of powerful spells. And I figured, you know, if a deck like this is playable, then I should try my best to make it work. And I ultimately decided to give it a shot, and I do not regret it in the slightest, even though, of course, unfortunately not enough to make it into the actual top cut with the top 8. I was still really happy with top 16 with Sky Striker. I think it's something to be proud of, because this deck is, while it's definitely not a bad deck, it's also like it's pretty much a rogue deck right now with all the other decks in the room. But I wanted to give it a shot, and the reason why I thought it could work is because I think this deck has a solid, Draco Tail matchup. It has a pretty good Radiant Typhoon matchup, and it's also decent into K9 Vanquish Soul. And those were the three decks I expected the most, and that's why I wanted to take this opportunity to play this deck, because in every format where the more combo heavy decks dominate, like decks like Malice or decks like Lunalight, decks like K9 Crystron, if those decks are more popular, then this deck is not a great choice, which those decks were not non-existent, but they were not very popular. Even though Malice did pretty well. We can talk about that later as well. We're going to talk about like why Malice performed so well, which I also did not expect, but even if it performed well, it was not that popular. Like, I played against a single Malice in the tournament, and I beat that one. But other than that, I didn't see that much Malice, even though some people obviously did really well with it. But yeah, you still lost to Draco Tail. Of course, Draco Tail is a good deck. Only because my deck is fine into Draco Tail does not mean I beat every single Draco Tail I played against. It's not like this deck does not farm Draco Tail. It's okay into Draco Tail. You can beat Draco Tail with it pretty well, but if there's a good Draco Tail player who opens a solid hand and has like Ash or Bell in hand, or maybe both, worst case, then yeah, they can beat you. We can go over the tournament report later. I'll tell you exactly what kind of matchups I had and which ones I struggled with and which ones were not so difficult. But I did lose to Draco Tails, yes, absolutely. And we're going to talk about that as well. So yeah, but all things considered, I had a pretty good time at the YCS, and I just wanted to get that out there. I think the Yu-Gi-Oh trading card game is in a very, very good spot at the moment. I think there is a lot of different playstyles represented in the top decks. You see grindier decks like Radiant Typhoon and also Sky Striker doing well. You see like mid-rangey decks like Draco Tail doing really well. You see combo-heavy decks still doing well. You know, we saw Malice in a bunch of top cuts. We saw Yummy, Radiant Typhoon, Tri-Brigade win the NA YCS as well, which we're going to talk about in a second. But there's a lot of different things that you can do in Yu-Gi-Oh at the moment, and it feels like it's relatively balanced between all of those different strategies, and I think that's pretty cool to see. So yeah. We're gonna just go over my tournament real quick, and we can talk about some of the matchups that I had. We're just gonna go by my Twitter thread that I did, just so that it's gonna help me as a little bit of a reminder. So in round 1, I played against Mitsurugi Orchist. I lost the dice roll there. I went second, and in the first game, I I saw they started with the Mitsurugi portion of the deck. I think they started, I think it was pre-prep. And at that point, I looked at my hand and I was like, okay, you know, Mitsurugi is an okay matchup for this deck. It's not like crazy good, but it's okay. I looked at their combo and I was like, okay, as long as it's pure Mitsurugi, I'm gonna be fine. And then eventually they pivoted into Zombie Vampire, and I was like, oh shit, now shit is going down. And the Zombie Vampire revealed that it was Orchist Mitsurugi, because they hit, I believe it was Harp Horror. And at that point, it became unwinnable for me in game 1, because they ended up, I mean, I still tried, but they opened the full Mitsurugi Orchist board, which means they had, I think, Prayers, Mitsu Trap, Orchist Counter Trap, Orchist Field Spell, Murakumo, IP Masquerena, a lot. And I ended up playing into it, and it ended up being actually winnable until they revealed they also had drawn with Dugaris, Dominus Impulse, and Called by the Grave, which completely destroyed me. So they lost game 1 to Mitsurugi Orchist, and that was tough. And I also, at that point, I thought I was gonna lose the first round, because if they make that board in game 3 again, then I'm gonna definitely lose to it. Game 2, I win going first. My opener was not that good, but their opener was also not that great. Like, it was like, I think I got hand trapped. I don't remember what it was. It was either Droll, or I think it was Imperm on 0, and then I just passed. Something like that. And then but they luckily couldn't play through. It was like Widow Anchor. I Widow Anchored the Girsu. I took it, and then they didn't have Habakiri in hand. And then in game 3, it was them going first and me basically just hoping they wouldn't have both sides of the equation again, like Mitsu and Orchist. So in game 3, I opened, I think it was Ash or Bell. I don't know which of the two it was. I think it was Bell. But I belled pre-prep, hoping they didn't have other Mitsu cards, and they didn't have other Mitsu cards. So all they did was the Orchist board, which was still a challenge. But basically they ended, I think it was the Link 4, Field Spell, Counter Trap, something, and some non-engine, and I was able to push through with that. But I think game 3, if I didn't open Ash or Bell for the pre-prep, I probably would have lost, because they would have had Orchist and Mitsu and everything like game 1 basically. But yeah, which is the nature of this deck, you know. Like I don't play as much non-engine to stop people from building a board, so whenever there is a deck that I'm going up against that makes an unbreakable board, I'm losing if I don't draw my few hand traps, which luckily in game 3 I had that Ash and they only had one Mitsu starter. But yeah, so yeah, for game 3 we pretty much played the classic Sky Striker versus Orchist, the classic toss format matchup, which Sky Striker was able to win for me. But yeah, and then round 2 was already the first loss of my tournament, which was kind of annoying. But I won the dice roll against Branded Dracotail, and in game 1, I opened pretty well in game 1 actually. I think it came to a point where I activated 0 to search Engage, and I think they belled it, and I crossed out the bell, which was also the 3rd spell in my grave. So at that point I failed really nasty, because I was like, okay, now I'm gonna engage for 3 spells. But then they also had Ash for the engage, and then that didn't resolve, so my board ended up being like 0 plus Widow Anchor plus something. I think I had, yeah, like I think I had like Lemnis Gate as well or something. And their hand, after having Ash and Bell, was something like Lucius, Pymena, Rahu, Urgula or something, and that cooked me completely. Game 2 I went first. Game 2 I went first, and I got drolled, I think, but I had thrust for different dimension ground, so I punished them pretty hard for the droll, so I won that. But then game 3 they went first, full Sky Striker combo, not Sky Striker, full Dracotail combo, plus Judgment plus Droll and Lockbird, which my hand in game 3 was actually really strong, but if they didn't have Droll and Judgment, I would have been fine. But because they had both, I got completely destroyed. It was like they opened like all 3 traps and then set 1 more, so it was 4 sets. And I went normal summon Ray with the plan, like, and my hand was like Ray, Desires, Droplet, Fallen at the Virtue. Like, it was a pretty good hand. But my idea was I'm gonna go Ray into 0, immediately 0 tag out into Ray and Rose, because I always side out 1 Rose going second against Draco Tail. So I didn't want to activate Desires and risk banishing it. I wanted to get it out of the deck with 0 first, which is something I do a lot with this deck. But they judgmented the Ray normal summon. And at that point, I already knew it was going to be rough. And then I activated Desires and they didn't flame it. At which point I was like, okay, they got drolled, don't they? So I drew 2 with Desires and then they drolled me as well, which was pretty tough. And then I could play into it a little bit, but I ended up losing after the droll plus the judgment. If it was one of the 2, I think I would have been okay, but because they had both, it was not winnable, which felt bad, but at the same time it felt okay because I felt like I couldn't have done anything different there, which was okay. But yeah, the round 2 loss to Draco Tail was pretty rough. Then I had Radiant Typhoon, which ultimately I had a pretty good experience against Radiant Typhoon this tournament. I think I played against 3 of them and I beat them all. And I think I only lost 1 game in total. No, I played against 4 Radiant Typhoons, actually, I think. Yeah, 4 Radiant Typhoons and I lost 1 game to Radiant Typhoon. So 8-1 in games versus Radiant Typhoon. Game 1, they had the full opener with Radiant Typhoon, but this deck, I think this deck does pretty well against Radiant Typhoon. So I broke it game 1. And then in game 2 was really weird because they bricked, but I also bricked. So we just like passed back and forth a little bit. But then I drew, I think it was Ray first. And won the game from there. But yeah. Round 4 was Branded Draco Tail again. Which I was able to outgrind in both games. They went first both games because they won the dice roll here as well. At that point, I was already pretty happy I was playing Sky Striker because, as you can see there from my dice rolls, including round 5 as well, I went 1 and 4 in the first 5 rounds in dice rolls. And I think if I had played a different deck, then I would have had a lot more problems going second with those matchups that I had. Because round 2, 3, and 4 was all basically just meta decks, which if those go first, I'm gonna have a really hard time. But yeah, round 5, I thought round 5 was surprising because I played against pure Yummy, like actual pure Yummy. Like they were doing the like the what's it called, the Cupid pitch into the White Forest Diabelze Synchro 8, and then like summon Zalen on my turn and stuff like that. We had a really, really long and grindy game 1 because they went first and full comboed basically, and then I grinded through it, which was really fun. It was a really fun matchup because Yummy is like, Yummy without Herald of the Arclight is so interactive. I thought it was really fun to play against them, but it was a really long game 1. One of the biggest problems that I had was that they had Linkuriboh in rotation, and Linkuriboh made my Widow Anchors really awkward. So it was a good back and forth, but ultimately I was able to win it. I remember this is in one of the end phases because it was a really long and grindy turn and back and forth. I forgot to set a Fallen and the Virtuous with Albion, and I almost lost because of it, but luckily I didn't get punished for it. But I realized as soon as they drew, I was like, I forgot the Fallen and the Virtuous because the turn was really long. And then they almost had enough follow-up to break through because I didn't have the quick play spell. But yeah. Game 2, I think, was a lot quicker, but I don't remember exactly what the problem was in game. Oh, I remember. They sent me first in game 2. I don't know if they thought I was blinding second with Sky Striker. But this was I said in the deck profile no one ever did this, but this is not true. Now that I'm looking at this, this was the only person that sent me first in the entire weekend. Because I think maybe they thought I was playing blind second Sky Striker because they won the dice roll in game 1 and they just noticed like, oh, my board got broken. Or maybe they just thought it was better in the matchup, but they did choose second. And I it was relatively smooth sailing because my opener was fine, and it was like Widow Anchor 0. Oh, I opened Forbidden Crown, which I Forbidden Crowned their Snatchy, which was pretty sick. So yeah, I should have crowned the normal summon, I think, in hindsight. No, it was they started Marshmallow. They started special summon Marshmallow, and I thought about crowning it, but I decided against it because they hadn't used their normal summon yet. So I just crowned the Snatchy. But they still had, they hard drew the field spell to revive, plus Cupsy, so they could still play with like Linkaribo because Snatchy points downwards, right? So they still make a Linkaribo and then do stuff with it. Ultimately, me setting up first and preventing them from playing a little bit with Crown and such was really good there. Round 6, I had a feature match, which you can check it out. I think it's, I guess it's a good showcase in some ways because I think it's, I mean, I don't blame my opponent. They were really nice and they were really nervous. So I've seen some of the comments under that feature match and people are not nice to my opponent because they did make some mistakes and they didn't play perfectly by no means. But also I was there. I saw they were very nervous. So I felt bad for them. They were already nervous when they came to the normal table when we were supposed to play. And then when the judge came and collected us for a feature match, they got even more nervous. And, you know, so please just be nice, okay? There was one incident in particular that I think is really interesting in that feature match in game 1 when I think they go Albaz fuse with my Link monster on their turn, and I bring back Ray and they summon Mirror Jade, and they didn't use turn player priority to activate Mirror Jade. They summon Mirror Jade, I bring back Ray, and I asked them, you know, anything on res, and they're like, nothing. So I tag out my Ray into the 0, and then again I asked them anything on summon, they say no, and I tag out the 0 and then pop the Mirror Jade. Which of course, because Mirror Jade doesn't target, if they just use turn player priority, send some, like activate the effect when my Ray is still on the board. If I chain Ray to summon 0, the 0 immediately gets banished and I can't use it to destroy the Mirror Jade. So there's a chance they could have won game 1 off of this. I still would have survived that turn because I had Rose in hand, so I could have still summoned Rose to block an attack. But since they didn't use the turn player priority there, which is honestly it's something I think it's understandable to miss. So I didn't blame them for it, and I think it's okay. It happens. But yeah, I won that feature match, which I was really happy about because I had the last, I think it was 3 feature matches I had. I lost all of them. I lost 2 feature matches at YCS Bologna, and I lost, what was it before? What was the feature match before then? I don't know, but it's been a while since I've won a feature match, so that was kind of nice. Round 7, I played against Malice, which was a really, I mean, for me it was a fun round because game 1 I went first. I made my board, which was an okay board, nothing too crazy, but it was okay. It was like 0 Lemnis Gate, Widow Anchor or something like that. And they drew for turn and they just left. They just scooped it up, and I was like, okay, that's cool. Game 2. They went first, they thought about like 30 seconds, and then they activated Shifter, and then they passed. I was like, okay. And then I activated Reinforcement of the Army. They went Ash. I went Talents, look at their hand, and their hand was Bell, March Hare, and Impulse. So at that point, I learned that they were playing Malice, and I took the March Hare away, so I knew they had Bell and Impulse and nothing else. And I had like Engage, which couldn't draw because I had no spells engraved because Shifter, but I just engaged for Ray. I just attacked, and I tagged out into like 0 or something, and I had like a Widow Anchor covering their top deck, and then the game was over. So that was my Malice experience. That was my only Malice experience over the course of the entire weekend as well, which, you know, I went first. They couldn't play through a single Widow Anchor. They told me after, like, they lost to Widow Anchor plus Lemnis Gate. That's why they didn't want to show the deck. And it did work. It was smart for them to scoop because I think I sided for Draco Tail. And then, yeah, game 2, they just bricked, I guess. They didn't Impulse Ray effect? Yeah, because they can't. Because I have no cards when I tribute it. That's why I did it that way. Round 8, I played against Branded Draco Tail again. So this is, at this point, my 4th Branded Draco Tail of the weekend, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. This was the 4th Branded Draco Tail in round 8. So 50% Branded Draco Tail so far. Yeah. That one was a dice roll win and it was a pretty straightforward game, all things considered. It was all 3 of these games were fun. I don't remember much about them, but I remember that they were good back and forth all 3 games. I remember game 2, they made a pretty strong board and I almost broke it, but I ended up losing, I think, because they had, I think it was a very late Ghost Bell. Farva, thank you for the 10 gifties. Appreciate you. I hope you had a good time watching the triple YCS this weekend. But yeah, okay, so game 2, I couldn't break their board because they ended up having, I think it was Dragon's Mind early and then Bell late in the turn, and that destroyed me. And then I won game 3 with a very clutch Eagle Booster on 0. But my game 3 opener in this game was really strong. I basically I had everything I can ask for, and I don't think they had Ash. So I started with a lot of card advantage in that game. So I beat that. And then round 9, I was a little bit surprised that I was able to win the match this smoothly, but I got paired against K9 Vanquish Soul and I lost the dice roll, which I felt like was an okay matchup for this deck, but it really depends. It's funny because it really depends on what kind of Vanquish Soul duelist you are sitting across from when you play this deck, because I feel like the way I look at it is there are two types of K9 Vanquish Soul duelists, you know? The one kind who focuses a lot on the K9 plays of the deck, and the other kind, you really have the thing go off 10 times. Yeah, it changed at some point and I don't know how to change it back. But yeah, I muted it now. What was I saying? Oh yeah, the types of Vanquish Soul duelists. Funnily enough, the part that's hard for Sky Striker to beat is the Vanquish Soul stuff. The stuff that I don't have a problem with is the K9 cards, because I never play into Izuna, I never give value to Ripper, and I have a really easy time breaking all of the rank 5 stuff. Like the quick play spell is no problem for me, the Ripper doesn't bother me, the Nash Knight or Masquerade isn't a problem for me. So all of that doesn't really matter. But the Vanquish Soul card advantage is what can outgrind me. Like if they go first and if they set up the Vanquish Soul stuff, they can make it really hard for me to kill them, and they can also make it really hard for me to outgrind them because they have like 6 cards in hand and crazy resource loop, right? And so the good thing for me in this match is that game 1, they opened really well. It was like first activation was Chaotic Elements into Jokul, and then they also had Mad Love. But they decided at some point, I think they overlaid Holly Sue and Jiaolong for Nash Knight because they already had Ripper. And basically what ended up happening is they didn't go for the Vanquish Soul trap. They just had, it was like Rock, Ripper, Chaos Masquerade, and Mad Love with the field spell and the quick play spell for K9 face down, but only one Vanquish Soul. So they just passed. So I thought they didn't even play the trap card, because some people don't play the Vanquish Soul trap. Some people just play Forced Release, right? So because they had the option to go for the Vanquish Soul trap and didn't, I thought they didn't play it. And that was also the reason why I won the first game. Like I don't know if I OTK'd them game 1 or if I just like I think I took apart the entire board and then they couldn't play on the follow-up turn. Is the trap even good against Sky Striker? It's the trap is fine against Sky Striker. It's not that good, but it's more about the way you play if you want to go for the trap is different, because you keep more Vanquish Soul names on the board, and you also typically keep more resources in hand because you need the attributes. And your interruptions on the opponent's turn in general are very layered with the trap card, because like the trap card summons like Raisin somewhere, and then you can pop with that as well. It's a lot less board focused, right? Whereas the K9 quick play spell requires you to have a board to be an interruption, right? The trap, basically I can start breaking the board and then you can activate the trap and put stuff on the board again. But with the K9 quick play spell, it's like if I remove your board, the card is dead. So I think that ended up being why I won the first game, is because they focused more on K9, less on Vanquish Soul, and that was good for me. And then game 2, it was even worse for them because they didn't open Raisin or Madlove. They just opened, it was normal summon Noroi, I think. And I was like, okay, my hand was really mid in game 2. I think I had 2 copies of, I remember it was 2 pair. I don't know what 2 pair. It was definitely 2 copies of the Radiant Typhoon quick play spell. 2 copies of some other spell. I don't remember which one. Not a crazy one though. I think Linkage. I think it was, yeah, it was 2 Linkage, 2 Radiant Typhoon Vision, and I think 1 Fallen at the Virtuous. That was my 5 cards that they looked at with Noroi. But then it turned out that they didn't play Yugioh. So because they didn't play Yugioh, they couldn't bridge into or try to draw Vanquish Soul cards. It was just a K9 board. It was Ripper, Masquerade, quick play spell, and some non-engine. And I ran over that like no problem. I think I even got drolled. But that I'm not sure if that happened. I think they had droll, but I'm not entirely sure. But it was no problem. I walked over it, no problem. So yeah. So that I was honestly after losing round 2, I was really happy to go 8-1 in day 1 with Sky Striker, because there was a lot of matches that were really close. I mean, there was a couple of 2-0s as well here, which I was really happy about. But also there, especially the Draco Tail matches were really close. Even my round 1 was really close. I could have lost that one easily if they opened better in game 3. It was a lot of really long and grindy games, so I was really happy to walk away 8-1 with it after day 1. And so for day 2, I was paired against Branded Draco Tail again. We can keep count. I think this is Branded Draco Tail number 5 in 10 rounds. And I beat that one despite losing the dice roll. I 2-0'd them. Game 1 was a classic Draco Tail game where they fully set up, but I was able to grind through it because they didn't have Ash and Bell behind it. And then game 2, it was... Game 2, I remember them opening with the Albaz and then summoning Cartesia, but then not activating the Cartesia effect because they didn't draw Draco. Oh no, wait, what was it? It was... no. It was normal summon Ecclesia, special summon Albaz, revive Ecclesia Tuner, and make the Ecclesia Synchro. And then they passed with the Ecclesia Synchro. And that's why I thought they had Cartesia in hand. Because they had already normal summoned, but they could have special summoned the Cartesia. Yeah, no, I misinterpreted their opener. I realized that now. Because they passed with the Ecclesia on the board, the Synchro. And I was like, okay, that means they can't use the effect, which must mean they have Cartesia in hand, right? Which I now realize is not what happened, because they then summoned. They later on they told me. Now I know I was wrong, but I thought they had Cartesia in hand. But what turns out, what was the case was they just didn't have Draco Tails in hand, so they didn't feel the need to summon the Cartesia from the deck. But they ended up summoning it on my turn, I think. But yeah, it was a weird game. Basically, they opened hand traps and some Albaz stuff, but no Draco Tail names. So they couldn't really do much other than summon the Synchro Pass and then have some hand traps. That game, I definitely got drolled. I got drolled that game, but it didn't matter because they didn't have engine, right? So, is the #1 priority against Draco Tail to limit the draws from their traps? So the game plan against Draco Tail is to let them set up, and then to, yes, prevent as many of the traps as possible so that they cannot get the recycling going, so that you can outgrind them. So you try to remove their board while preventing the traps from drawing, and then over the course of like 2 or 3 turns, you try to cut them off of the follow-up, and eventually they run out of like targets for the graveyard effects. That's the goal, yeah. But yeah. Anyways, a good start to the day. Round 10, I won against Draco Tail, and I was on 9-1. And also, I pulled... I opened my pack, and I got this guy, which I thought was really neat. I didn't have this one yet. I was really happy with that. The Caesar got The Caesar got pulled. All right, round 11. I won against Radiant Typhoon, which put me to 10-1. This one, I remember being... I went first game 1. They didn't really have much of a chance in game 1, even though they played into it. There was one interesting moment where they summoned, I think it was Crocea. I had Widow Anchor, and I decided to go instead of just activating Widow Anchor on the Crocea so they could dodge it with Droplet. I decided to go chain 0 and then chain Widow Anchor, so I had no monsters on the board, so they couldn't activate Droplet, which I thought was a cool play. Turns out they didn't have Droplet anyway, so it didn't matter, but I thought it was cool. Then in round 12, I lost to Branded Draco Tail, which was a very, very solid match. But ultimately it just comes down to if the Draco Tail player draws well and plays well, they have a pretty solid chance to beat this deck. Like, basically, in both of those games, they opened strong non-engine, is what makes the difference. This is something that this deck struggles with. Every single Draco Tail board is beatable for Sky Striker pretty much every time, unless your hand is completely ass. But with any somewhat solid or average hand, you can beat the Draco Tail board no problem. But it becomes a huge problem if they draw multiple good non-engine. I would say one to two non-engine are beatable. Like if, let's say, they have, like, I don't know, a Dragon's Mind and a Bell, that's doable. But if they have like critical mass of those, then it becomes a big problem. And I remember in those games, they opened really well. They opened like Branded Fusion plus Draco Tail combo plus multiple non-engine both times. And they also, I gotta give it to them, they played it well as well. They definitely played it well. They used their interruptions and their non-engine in the right spots. So after this round, I couldn't really complain. It was just like, you know, my opponent drew well and played well, so they won. It was okay. But it's how it is sometimes. But this was Branded Draco Tail number 6. And so far, my record against Branded Draco Tail is 4-2. So it's okay, you know, for Draco Tail being the best deck in the format, or at least in this YCS, I think it was also the most represented deck in Top Cut. So it's okay. Round 13 was another Radiant Typhoon, where I ended up winning 2-0, where I went first. I had a solid opener game 1 and they couldn't beat it, and then game 2 they just bricked, which was really unfortunate, like for them, I guess. I mean, I didn't complain about it, but they opened, I think it was set 3 pass, and then I played through it, and like I didn't even win quickly because they had non-engine to stop me a little bit. But realistically, you know, like I knew I was winning immediately because I had solid plays, and then also I had interaction for whatever they top deck. Like if I knew if they draw a Crocea now, I can stop it. Like I had like Droplet or something, so I can like activate Droplet, send a spell so they can't activate like a Fallen and the Virtuous or Droplet themselves to dodge it. So I was like, you know, I am. Radiant Typhoon seems overhyped. I don't know. I think Radiant Typhoon is a pretty strong deck. My deck just had a good matchup against it. Realistically, like my deck is supposed to beat Radiant Typhoon. But yes, it is a little bit bricky, but it's not a bad deck. It's too bricky to perform and was so targeted. There's downsides to it. I mean, ultimately, yes, those are the reasons why I talked about this last week before the YCS. I talked about that. Those were the reasons why I was hesitant to play Radiant Typhoon. I like the playstyle. I think it's good, but it is a little bit bricky, and people tend to have a lot of hate in the side deck for it at the moment. So I was hesitant to do it, but it is a good deck. It's definitely a good deck. So yeah, at that point I was 11-2, and there was 2 more rounds of Swiss, so I needed to win the last 2 rounds to make it into the top 8. Round 14, the dream was over. I got destroyed by Branded Draco Tail in round 14, where I lost a dice roll, and in both games it was pretty rough. Like game 1, I think it was the full board plus Ash plus Bell, and my hand was okay, not great, so I didn't really, you know, I didn't really get to do much. Game 2 was probably the worst opening hand I had all weekend, where my only play was Hornet Drones. I activate Hornet Drones, I make Kagari, I add back Hornet Drones, I activate Hornet Drones again, I make 0, and it gets Veilered. I have Crossout in hand, but I don't play Veiler for Crossout. I also had no Fallen spell to dodge it, so I just got Veilered on my 0, and I couldn't do anything else. And then I had a couple of sets. Like, I had, like, it was like Widow Anchor, Crossout, and something else. And then they started playing, and I activated, I think they went normal summon Cartesia, and they didn't use the effect. That they didn't use the priority to activate the effect. Then I think I activated 0 to tag out. They went Ash. I went Crossout on Ash, and then they chained Called By on my 0, and at that point I was completely out of engine. And they had Cartesia on the board, and then next step they went activate Rahu. And the last card in hand was Urgula, so I got completely destroyed. It was not doable. So at that point I was 11-3, which meant I couldn't make top 8 anymore. But yeah, one of your losses against Dracotail should have been Marco Parenti. He said he won because Sanctifier not being targetable. Well, the round 14 was against Marco Parenti. I don't remember if he summoned a Sanctifier. In game 2, he definitely didn't. In game 1? No, I don't think the Sanctifier mattered. I don't think Sanctifier mattered in that game. Maybe he summoned it in game 1. I don't remember the Sanctifier being a problem, though. But yeah, anyways. Round 15. Oh yeah, round 15 is not here. Round 15 is later. Right, I just made one final like post. Round 15, I played against fellow Radiant Trade team member Nico on Radiant Typhoon. At this point, it was a pretty chill match because we both were X3. We both knew we couldn't make top 8 anymore. So it was a really friendly and fun game. I ended up going first game 1, and it was funny because as soon as I didn't have a chance to top anymore, I opened the most broken hand I've ever opened in the entire tournament. I won the dice roll, I went first, and I think I resolved 4 engages on turn 1 and desires. I banished nothing important. It was the perfect opener, and I had, at some point, I had 9 cards in hand in turn 1, when it quote unquote didn't matter anymore. I was like, my opener was like 0, 5 sets, Ash in hand. I don't think I had Bell, but it was 0, 5 sets, 4 cards in hand. One of them was Ash. It was insane. Best opener I had all weekend. And then yeah, okay, well, you know, I won that one. Game 2 he won going first, and then game 3 I won. Yeah, it was okay. So game 3 my opener was mediocre. I sided out Mystical Space Typhoon going first against Radiant Typhoon because it's obviously really weak, and I opened triple Radiant Typhoon Vision. So I could activate 1 to draw 2 and then discard another one, but I was still stuck with the 3rd copy in hand, which is kind of awkward. And then his opener was also not great. There was a moment where, like, I think I opened Ash and Droll going first, but no real play because I think he ashed my only play, which was either it was Engage or Rhoda, I don't remember, but he ashed my only play after I drew 2 with Vision. And then I passed, and then next turn it was like I activated Vision blind without a quick play spell in hand because otherwise I would lose the game. And then I drew, like, my hand was Ash, Droll, Vision. I activate Vision to draw, and I draw, first card I draw is Desires, and the second card I draw is a quick play spell. And then I can activate Desires, and then Desires draws me Upstart, and then Upstart draws me a play, and then I win. Yeah, it was pretty tense. But I ended up winning round 15, which was okay, all things considered. And then I of course, tiebreakers, I still had to hope a little bit because there was a lot of X3s, but the tiebreakers were good enough for top 16, so I was really happy about that. And ultimately, I think pretty happy with the performance with Sky Striker, honestly. I think there's the losses I had against Dracotail, I think are all understandable. I think they're all fine. I think they're all something that other decks would probably also lose. And overall with I think my dice roll win rate was definitely negative again. So I think if I had played a different deck that wasn't as good going second as Sky Striker, I may have struggled a little bit more. But do you know how many world points you will get from this? They already updated the. There's some people running a spreadsheet for the world's points. They're keeping track of it, and apparently I'm in 17th place again, which is good. Of course, top 16 qualify, but I'm not far behind. I think I'm 1 point behind 16th. So we are back in it from the last two YCSs where I got that the regional season started mediocre for me, but the last two YCSs really helped. You know, I got top 8 at Bologna, top 16 at Dortmund now. So I'm back in it, which is cool. If nationals and the upcoming regionals are going well, then you know, it's doable. Oh yeah. All right, before we take a look at the results from the other tournaments, I just quickly want to talk about some of the questions that people had in under the YouTube video, or I guess you can also ask some questions right here. Let me just lay out the deck list real quick. I'm not going to go over the card explanations individually because I did that in the deck profile, which, by the way, feel free to check out the deck profile on YouTube if you want a more detailed explanation on the deck list. And also feel free to subscribe on YouTube. We are getting very, very close to 100K. I think we're basically at 99 now. So we are getting very, very close. The number one question that I got, or I guess the two main questions that I got are how did you side deck? And also, how did you like Forbidden Crown? Because of course the decision to only play Forbidden Crown in the side deck might be a little weird, because of course this card is a very powerful spell and people have been liking it a lot in Sky Striker, and so did I. And also the going first thing, yeah. So number one, let's go one by one. Going first, I believe that going first with Sky Striker in this format is mandatory. Because what I talked about earlier is a very, very common dynamic in the format. In the current format, you basically, if you let your opponent combo first with a deck like this, and this is something that it's not even true exclusively for Sky Striker, but also true for a lot of other decks in the format, and also, I guess, could be considered one of the problems of modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that at the moment, I feel like, and I guess you can let me know if you have similar experiences when you're playing Yu-Gi-Oh! These days. One of the greatest things about modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Decks, for most of them, is that you look at their end board when they're done playing, and you actually feel like it's winnable. This happens to me a lot when I play Yu-Gi-Oh! These days. Very, very often, I look at a Draco Tail board, I look at a Radiant Typhoon board, I look even at a Vanquish Soul Canine board, and I think like, okay, you know what? I can win this, right? This is worth playing, and this is not just with Sky Striker, this is in general. However, as soon as they start having like 1 to 2 to maybe 3 solid non-engine next to that board is when it becomes like unbeatable. Which is a separate discussion on it in itself, like the power of non-engine and the fact that non-engine should be better going second than going first. But like, I think especially right now, you know, when there's certain decks that like go first, produce a lot of card advantage, have a strong board, and then you're going second, and your stuff just gets negated by stuff like Ash, I think it becomes infinitely harder to win, and this is the same problem with this deck. Every time I go second with this deck, I feel like I can win, unless my opponent also has Ash and or Bell or Droll, or like too many of the other non-engine like Imperm and stuff like that. Imperm is usually fine. Imperm isn't really a big deal for this deck, but especially Ash and Bell are huge problems for this deck, which is why I also played Crossout and Called By in the main deck. And I think if you blind second, you put yourself into that position willingly every single round to essentially lose if your opponent draws a playable hand plus 1 or 2 of these guys. And since especially Ash is in every single deck and Bell is in most decks at the moment, or at least a solid portion of the decks, I think that makes you unlikely to perform at a tournament if you do this every single game. If you do this every single game, I think there's just going to be too many games where your opponent opens 1 starter and some hand traps and you can't win the game. And that's why I think you have to go first. Because when you go first with Sky Striker, if your opponent has Ash or Bell, yes, they hurt, but at least you get hit with Ash or Bell before your opponent has an overwhelming board. You know, you get hit with the Asher Bell when you are in like the building the board phase. You are not trying to break a board at the same time while generating a like card advantage. So it really helps to get drolled before your opponent plays. It helps to get ashed or belled before your opponent plays. If you get ashed or belled after your opponent plays, then you usually lose the game. And I think that's the reason to go first with this deck, is so that you can establish some interruptions, you can establish your own game plan before your opponent puts up a board that just attacks you for a game immediately next turn, right? So that is that. I think there's a consideration to maybe go second post side in certain matchups, but yeah. Okay. Next, side deck, or like ratios, I guess. So for the most part, the stuff that I side out in this deck is usually I side out 1 Rose, 1 Desires, going second, usually, as well as some amount of Upstart Goblins. This is to avoid Droll post side, because I think Droll is more common in side decks right now than in main decks. So having these cards in your main deck, there is no downside to it, but post side, especially going second, when Droll hurts the most, I want to reduce the number of these cards in the deck a little bit. Also, in some matchups, like for example against Radiant Typhoon, I do take out 2 copies of Ash Blossom, which might sound counterintuitive, but I personally, even though Radiant Typhoon is a little bit bricky, I do not want to play the hand trap minigame with them. I do not want to Ash one of their starters to just hope they can't play. And I also don't want to hope that they don't have the means to chain block their Crocea. I just keep 1 Ash, 1 Bell for cross out against Radiant Typhoon. The other 2 I side out. Some matchups I side out these one-offs. Sometimes side out 1 Hornet Drone, sometimes side out 1 Eagle Booster, sometimes side out a Shark Cannon. Going first, sometimes I side out the Mystical Space Typhoon if it's not great in the matchup, like against Draco Tail, for example. You can side this out going first. Against Radiant Typhoon, you side this out going first. If it's not a strong interruption in the matchup, I would take out the MST going first. Similar to the Fallen and the Virtuous, this card I side out against Draco Tail when I'm going first, because the spot removal is not that important, and dodging Flame is more important when you're going second. Although sometimes you can decide to keep 2 in the deck as well. So these are the card, and Droplet can sometimes go out going first as well. So these are your options when you're talking side outs, I think. I don't think I've sided out these cards over here ever. There was one matchup where I sided out a Widow Anchor. I don't remember what it was. Maybe it was Yummy going second. But nah, it wasn't Yummy going second. But yeah. So that is the rough siding patterns. Whereas, I mean, the side-ins should be relatively obvious, but I guess we can go over it. Shared Ride is only for going first against decks that search a lot. Forbidden Crown is exclusively for going first in basically every matchup, but going second you can also side it versus Vanquish Soul and Yummy. Basically the decks where they have one endboard piece that is very annoying and very small, like Snatchy or Rock of the Vanquisher, because then you just negate that and then you can attack it for game a couple of times, which is neat. Droll and Lockbird is, I mean, going second against the heavy combo decks, because those are a hard matchup, and then going first against Radiant Typhoon is also really strong. Hamp is for everything like Luna Light, but also for everything that has like really annoying endboard pieces. Like I sided it in against Yummy, for example, because like maybe you just go normal summon Ray, they don't do anything, and then you can Hamp the Snatchy or Hamp the Zalen or whatever. So yeah. 2 Thrust, which I side going second all the time. Every matchup I side this card going second because it's amazing going second. Going first, I only side it against decks where I side the DDG, which is at the moment, I think in the entire tournament, only Draco Tail. There might be other decks where I would side this, but basically it has to be a deck where it's really good against it and they also play enough hand traps to justify putting in Thrust. And then the Lightning Storms and Feather Duster are going second into most decks that have either a lot of back row or in this case a lot of like monsters in attack position, but for the most part the back row decks like Radiant Typhoon and Draco Tail. So yeah. What do you do against the second Liger Dancer? Okay, so the realistically, because I also saw people asking like, oh, what's the plan against Spell Canceller? This deck is a meta call, okay? Realistically, if your opponent summons 2 Ligers, you lose. If your opponent summons Spell Canceller, you lose. You have a very, very small chance to beat those decks, only. Like, for example, Ray can out Spell Canceller if they have nothing else, because you can go 0 and tag out and pop it. But realistically, yes, those decks are gonna beat you if you don't have, like, specifically Droll and Lockbird to stop them from setting up. There is a very, very small chance against double Liger, which is that you can hamp one of them and then you can bounce the hamp back with Lemniscate. Which we never even tested that in practice, whether that works or not consistently. But in theory, you can give them hamp and then you can Lemniscate it back to your hand and then hamp them again next turn. But that means you do have to like survive a turn against Liger Dancer, which you can technically do if you draw like a Forbidden Crown, or you can access Eagle Booster and they can't stop it. But yeah. You can't Lemnis Hamp, can you? It's not an ace monster. Well, no, you can't cycle it from the grave. But you can, they have it on the board, you can bounce it. The Charmies, the Charmies are weird in this deck, but they're not bad. It's just that, like, in theory, it's very dependent on the order of how it happens, right? Like, if you have the Charmy in your opening hand, and then you draw all of your powerful spell cards with it, and your opponent makes a smaller board, then I think it's amazing, right? Like, if you open the Charmy, it's amazing. The problem is this deck draws so many cards later on in the turn and in the game that I feel like if you put in 3 or 6 Charmies, you are almost guaranteed to draw into dead cards. Go Hamp, Typhon plus Eagle Booster with 3 spells in grave, then Hamp again next turn. Yeah, that can work actually. That's neat. Yeah, that would work. Yeah, you can Typhon the Hamp back to your hand immediately, and then you have it ready for next turn. Yeah, that's cool. I could see that. Yeah. Did you ever consider playing Curse Seal? Yes, we considered playing Curse Seal or Radiant Typhoon, but ultimately we figured, or like, we had versions of this side deck which had more specific side deck cards. For example, there was a point where we had Lava Golem in the deck to cover for Lunalight and K9 Crystron with Spell Cancel, right? We had a version with Lava Golem. We also had a version with Curse Seal of the Forbidden Spell or Radiant Typhoon. But we ran into this problem where if we play those super specific cards for only one matchup, we just don't have enough room in the side deck to cover everything, right? Like and then that's when we decided to go like, okay, instead of doing Lava Golems, we're gonna do Crowns and Hamp, because this gives us a theoretical chance against Lunalight, but we can also side the Crown in every other matchup, right? We don't have to just hope that we play against Lunalight for the Lava Golems to be good or whatever. And honestly, for K9 Crystron, we just accepted that it would probably be a loss if they win the dice roll. If we're going first against K9 Crystron, it's fine. But if we go second, then it's okay. We lose. Like, we have Droll maybe game 3, but realistically, you just gotta manage. I think that's also important when you're preparing for tournaments and you're building a deck. Sometimes you don't have to be able to beat everything. If you predict that, for example, in Europe, I didn't think many people were gonna play K9 Crystron. Like, it's just not a very popular deck at the moment, and I saw no one play it. And so I think it was okay to make the call that we don't need an out for spell cancel. Yeah, I think that's fine. But yes, if I had run into a K9 Crystron, I probably would have lost.